Today's episode of The Mom Game is brought to you by our friends at Gateway Buick GMC at LBJ and Jupiter. I know that buying a car can be stressful, but not at Gateway because their slogan is, Gateway's got it. And just what does that mean? Well, it means Gateway's got a wide selection of new Buicks, GMCs, and GM certified used vehicles, all competitively priced. Gateway's got it. In these busy times, you want a car dealer who makes things easy and convenient? Well, guess what? Gateway's got it. When you log on to gatewaybuickgmc.com, look for the Shop, Click, Drive button. This allows you to shop from the comfort of your home, and who doesn't want that? In fact, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, select your vehicle. 2, create your offer. 3, schedule your delivery. And on top of all this, Gateway Buick GMC offers complimentary car washes for life. So when you want a dealer who has it all, Gateway's got it. You can find them online at gatewaybuickgmc.com or shop in person at LBJ and Jupiter. GMC, we are professional grade. Experience the new Buick.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Mom Game podcast. Emily, we are at episode number 85.
85, this is a big one.
This is a big one. We're doing something right, and we have a very special guest for episode number 85. We have my friend, my former but still kind of sort of co-worker. It is Bob Sturm from The Ticket, host of The Hardline from 3 to 7. Bob, how did it take us so long to get you here? I'm so sorry.
I'm honored. 85. That's better than 185.
There you go.
So I was somewhere on your list, so that's cool.
For the record, he's my friend too.
Yes.
And furthermore, it's because y'all's schedules were so jacked for so long.
That's true.
We didn't have a chance.
Right.
It physically couldn't work out because of our shoot
like
schedule.
I told Corby, it's part of the reason why I had to leave the 10 to 3 shift is so I could have you guys on the Mom Game and that it would fit better with everybody's schedule.
But you were telling him that, scheduling him before me.
Oh,
well,
this is your friend. This is your friend, Bob.
Oh, you just claimed it too, but now he's my friend.
No, I would have scheduled Corby as well. We find out on a regular basis he has a way more exciting life than I have.
I don't know that that's true.
I don't know that that's
because
true
of the
either.
evolution of your life, the fact that you are where you are now, and then the stories you've told about where you came from, is pretty amazing.
Okay, fair.
So let's go back.
Okay.
Let's start way back when Bob was a wee little boy.
Are we starting with baby Bob?
I want to start with, I think it's important to be, I think when we have sports Sturm here, we need to be factual. We need to be chronological. We need to be organized.
He wasn't always bald.
He wasn't always bald.
Yeah.
But when you were born, you were bald, and then now you're bald again.
And it all comes full
Grew
circle.
some awkward hair and then got rid of it as fast as I could.
There was hair at some point.
Yeah.
But you lived a very, from what I can tell, sheltered and conservative life.
Yeah, I would. It's all weird as you're experiencing it because it's your only childhood, right?
Yeah,
So
you don't know any different.
Yeah, you don't know. You think all the kids probably go through this, but no. Looking back, there's no question that I come from a background that is best described as probably, the footloose environment that was described there, where we don't want to dance.
Could you not dance, really?
I never really cared that much, Julie. I don't know if
you ever danced, period?
Very awkwardly for one song just to make my wife happy, and then get back to my seat and get back to scrolling sports scores. But it's just it was a weird environment growing up, just in the sense of it was a lot of rules, and I suppose some of them served me very well, and some of them I still scratch my head on why that was a real priority. But it definitely set the table for I guess what turned into me. Right?
So how does that affect the way you parent now, your children?
Oh, immensely, because now I'm stuck in my own head about, okay, so if I didn't like A, B, and C, let me try D, E, and F. And, then you're like second guessing, like, okay, so for instance, a good one would be music.
Okay.
So music was heavily legislated in my childhood. Like, I remember pitching Michael Jackson's Thriller to my parents. Like, I really would love this. I mean, I was like 11 or 12 and, your first album and you
wanted to buy the CD.
meekly approach.
There wasn't CDs
No,
then, Jules.
tapes. We were doing tapes.
I don't know. Anything before me, how am I supposed to know?
Between records and CDs, we had tapes.
Yep.
That was my era.
Cassettes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cassettes.
I've heard of that.
Right.
Right after 8 tracks, which I got on the tail end of 8 tracks.
That's strong.
Tail end of 8 tracks.
Which you would pop
Jeez,
in your
man.
little Walkman. And,
the
and have to
Walkman.
rewind it back to the song you liked. But so I pitched a Thriller and that was not going to happen. So Michael Jackson was just way off the board of what could be.
Turns out they were maybe on to something.
Yeah.
The rest of us didn't know. They were right.
Yeah, come to think of it, you might be honest. Well, anyway, so my approach was always, as a kid, you come up with this real convincing argument as to why this is all stupid.
Right.
And for me, especially growing up as, kind of a rap fan, but I was always, kind of hiding it from my parents because I knew that wouldn't be real popular, but I was into like Public Enemy and LL Cool J and Kool Moe Dee and all that stuff.
Aw,
and so,
classics.
so as you're going through that, you are basically pitching to anyone who will listen that music is very similar to like cowboy movies. The actors aren't actually cowboys, and they're just kind of taking you to a place where your imagination can kind of go through that process. And these are just storytellers. It's not really watching a cowboy movie did not convince me to be a cowboy. It just entertained me for a couple hours, and that's what this album does. I like I don't actually want to live in Compton. I'm sure it's great, but it's probably not for me. I'm just going to stay here, but I don't mind listening to, Dr. Dre or Eazy-E kind of explain to me what their experience is like, similar to a cowboy, and so that was my approach. Well, then when you become a dad of a teenage son or sons or, my three, I have 3 teenagers now, but it's, so my approach was none of this matters. Music, listen to whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And, obviously that wasn't the right approach either because, then you're trying to express to them that this is all just sort of people generally acting. Like even a musician that feels like he's being true to himself is kind of trying to give the audience what he thinks they want. And so the super casual approach on everything, and I'm not even worried about language anymore, but their super casual approach on like drug use or just, how they view women or just anything like that. You're like, oh, okay. So we do need some rules. And so, so you're constantly overcorrecting way to the, it's player's manager. Hard ass. Yeah. And you just keep going back and forth, and you realize after a generation that you're just running in place. Yeah, like you're not actually making any progress because you're just turning the steering wheel back in the other direction. And
that's what parenting is, isn't it? It's
100%.
Like when they're little, you're figuring it out day by day. You finally figure out one phase, they get to the next one, and then that one's like, okay, everything I had figured out has now changed. Totally. And then it continues and continues and continues. And that's why parenting is one of the hardest things in the entire world, but the most rewarding.
Yeah, and perhaps. It's also the fun conversations that we all have. And I'm not even sure if we're supposed to have them or not, but we just have them because we're humans. And the questions are, okay, well, what, do you want a boy or a girl? And that's a simple conversation until you actually parent, and then you come up with real strong theories that you then find out were kind of crazy, but you felt, so like I think parenting a girl is so much easier than parenting a boy.
Okay, why is that?
I don't know. And it might just be my experience with my girl versus my boys. But she...
Would your wife say the same thing?
That's a great question.
You hear about that battle between moms and adolescent girls, and I'm so terrified because my girl is so headstrong and batshit crazy that I'm like, we're completely screwed at this point. So I wonder if your wife would say the same thing.
No, I think we have very different experiences with each of our three teenagers, which, again, then we're back to comparing notes. And sometimes I feel like I'm like performative parenting as to how I'm going to be scored by my wife, as opposed to what my intuition tells me. And so you debate about which gender is easier, and then you debate what stage of being, the children are the most aggravating. And, it's just, by the time you get comfortable with it, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
I think
they're gone.
Yeah. And then you spend the rest of your life probably second guessing everything you did based on every event in their life. Mm-hmm. I think part of the experience is probably beating yourself up as much as possible. Mm-hmm. That's a great human experience. I'm lousy at everything. I'm failing, and I failed now my kids. And so if they get in any situation, they get fired from a job, they fail a class, they do anything, and you're like, oh, I knew I did this wrong. And
really?
So, well, it's just, maybe it's how I'm wired, but yeah, you want to take responsibility, because at your core, you want to believe that your role matters.
Right.
Like it
matters, but to an extent, right?
Yes.
Like a lot of it is your kid is your kid, and no matter what you do, they're gonna make mistakes and they're gonna make their own decisions and choices. And so I think you can't take too much of the blame for things that go wrong, or too much of the praise for things that go right. But everyone obviously looks at that differently.
Yeah, and I think that's probably where you reach that proper stage of thinking, is that you understand, like many of us are from multi-kid families, and we realize how different our siblings are from us, even though our parents probably largely did the same thing, except, the further down you go down the line,
right.
The youngest kid doesn't get any pictures taken.
Yeah.
But it's a weird deal.
It's interesting, right? Kids are different because they're different people. But also, like, how much influence does the parent have on the kid? If you can have the same parents, 3 kids, and the 3 kids are totally different,
right?
It's a lot to think about, right?
But it's so much to think about. And for me, even though you didn't ask,
you can tell me anything.
You made me think of something else.
Yeah.
And for me, it's the question of, how do you make them hungry?
Yeah.
Like how do you make them want to get out of bed and accomplish things?
Yep.
Which comes so natural to me, but it always did.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had a boss say, we need more out of you, because.
And why do you, we're just going to keep getting philosophical.
Sure.
Here.
Yeah,
but
where does that come from?
Why do you think you were like that? Was that something related to your upbringing?
I don't know. That's a good question. I just have always, here's what it is. My hobbies have always been my job.
Yeah.
Like most people aren't that lucky. Most people have a job that they do their best at so they can free up time for their hobbies. Uh-huh. But what if it's the same thing? Well, you're the luckiest guy in the world.
You can't escape it.
Yeah, I'm the luckiest guy in the world in one sense. On the other sense, I don't know when I'm working and when I'm playing, honestly. And so every day, all I think about is this, whatever it is.
Right.
And so, is it a job? Is it what I would do if I didn't have a job? So I think that even puts pressure on my kids to say, well, what do I want to do with my life? Well, Dad figured it out when he was like 2.
Yeah.
How come I can't figure it out? Which goes back to my weird upbringing of knowing what
weird. It's right.
Okay.
It's very different from where you are right now, considering what you're doing right now, especially considering the station you work at. For those who don't know, if you're listening and being like, who is Bob Sturm?
Why does he talk so much?
You don't. Bob has been on the ticket for 20 plus years.
23.
Yeah. And the ticket, of course, is where Julie used to work. We have listeners in like,
we do.
Afghanistan and places.
Cool.
So we have
Shout
to make
out.
sure they know.
Shout out to everybody out there.
Yes. We're big in Chicago, and I don't know.
It's weird.
There's a heat map somewhere, and so we're
Cool.
trying to make everybody happy. But you were in the noon to 3 shift. Before that was before my time here. But when I got here, you were noon to 3.
Yes.
And then you recently moved. Not recently. It's been years now.
2, 3? Almost 2 years. In
Okay,
January.
2 years.
Yeah.
Moved to the drive time hard line from 3 to 7.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyway, but the ticket, for those of you listening in Afghanistan who aren't aware, is a very, it's a it's a bit of a cult. It's
Yes.
a bit of a cult, which I say that with the highest regard and with the highest compliment. We're doing our best to create a cult here on the Mom Game.
It's working, obviously.
And it's something that I've never seen accomplished in a media platform the way the ticket has been able to do it, to create this cult following. It has also been traditionally a very much a boys club.
Yeah.
Totally. Julie, there's been Layla Rahimi was there for a little while. There's been some dabblings here and there.
Shout out to Chicago.
Shout out to Chicago. Yeah, just got a new
Maybe
job.
she's our listener.
Shout out to maybe it's Layla. Layla, hope you're listening. And then Julie was kind of probably the most prominent. She was the queen of the ticket.
There's no doubt.
She is. And I loved seeing that reception of her. And I loved also too seeing you guys kind of squirm for a while.
Yeah.
Because you're like,
what
do we do? I mean, it's like telling your dad you started your period. Right. Like it's which my dad
I can totally relate.
Sent me to the doctor. Like you're not like,
Mom doesn't know what that's like.
Right. I mean, it's like me telling John Blake, my boss at the Rangers, like I'm having cramps or like anything female related. And he's like, I just whatever you need, whenever you need to come back,
Just stop talking about it.
Just stop talking about it. So to see you guys kind of, I don't know, squirm. But what my whole point was, you coming from your background and ending up at this total dude frat party, which is what it was a lot of the time. You were definitely the most serious of the fratsters, but it definitely is this. That had to be somewhat of a easing into process for you that I'm sure was you had internal battles with.
Oh,
little Bob.
Yeah, what's really weird about it is where I'm from, I was the cut up who would get in trouble.
Ooh.
So this is like, ready for a Cowboys reference?
Here we go.
Bring it.
This is like Cooper Rush was absolutely the best quarterback he ever knew.
Sure. Absolutely.
At a much lower level. And so he gets here and everybody's like, man, I can't believe you made that throw. Been making these throws my whole life.
Yeah, how do you think I got here?
I'm just surrounded by these absurd athletes who can do anything. So you could be the class clown in your class.
Right.
You could be the guy who's on the brink of suspension and all these things at your real strict school.
So you were a bad boy.
I mean, relatively speaking.
Okay.
But then you walk into a
know.
world with Gordon and Corby and these guys, and you're
and
like,
Dan, who's your partner.
Yeah,
he's
and you're
probably
and you're just like,
he says the most inappropriate stuff of anybody, I think.
and you're like, I'm Cooper Rush.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by these guys. And
I wish we had drops because I would make that a drop.
So now I'm the guy, that's really serious, and I am, but I'm not. So that's the weird dichotomy of it all. And then of course, yes, being the Christian guy was the real weird thing because, look, I went to Liberty, okay, and I know what that means the second you say it, but here's the crazy thing: when I went to Liberty initially, it was thought of as I went to like Berkeley. I went to like the most liberal Christian school available.
Really?
Okay.
Because my upbringing was way stricter than Liberty. Okay. People can't process what I just said, but it's true. If like Liberty's thought of as a sort of super strict whack job school. And to a point, it kind of is. But if you went to a school even stricter, then, your pastor's like, man, I don't know if you should go there. It's pretty crazy. It's really not what you're all about. So I've had this experience a few times.
Yeah.
And each time you get to a new environment and basically if you say you're a Christian or if you say I went to this school or whatever, people are automatically going to kind of assume what you're all about before they even meet you.
They're going to paint you. They're going to put you in a box. They're going to paint.
Totally. And so when you're in your mid-20s, you're super insecure about that. And, by the time you're in your late 40s, you've mastered your insecurity a little bit. But back then, you're like, man, if these guys find out about me, man, I'm going to get run right out of here. And us, in addition to all that, you're from Market 166, and you move directly to Market 5. And you're like, I just won the lottery. My only job is not to screw this up.
Yeah.
And so
here you are.
And so, but a lot of that is all of these, as you pretty well noted, is all these situations where you're trying to navigate, people assuming things about you, whether it makes you uncomfortable or not. You're not even worried about that as much as you're worried about, okay, how is this going to play? How is this going to affect my ability to stay
Right.
in market 5, you know?
Yeah.
So at first it's just, you're just
Like survival.
yeah.
Yeah.
But two things. One, I guess you are maybe the most, I don't know if I'd say most serious, but Bob is sneaky funny. One of the funnier guys there. You, just working with you every day for the time that I did, you and Dan together. I mean, your jokes are like the jokes where you have to like think for a second, then you're like, oh, but you say it just so casually. And I guess that's why you've made it where you've made it, because that's what radio is. It's good.
Sneak in and get out.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Yes. So I don't want to discredit your humor at all while we're here and saying that you're more serious. But also kind of in reference to everything that you were just saying about who you were and fitting in, and these are all these goobers here. What's this going to be like? And I'm, the Christian one. I feel like you, and you can tell me yes or no, have done a really good job of sticking to who you are, sticking to your morals, standing by your faith, standing by your convictions, whatever that may be, through all of this craziness around you. And you almost understand that a lot of this is entertainment, right?
Yeah.
These guys are doing what they're doing to be entertainers. And I feel like you've done a good job of being you.
Well, I thank you for saying that. I would also say I would have to cut it into different eras, because for the first 7 or 8 years, I was terrified of being different. And part of that was, again, super insecure, super paranoid about being sent back to Market 166. I remember, when my father-in-law was still with us and me talking to him about marrying his daughter, that sort of thing. He could not fathom that you could talk about sports and support his daughter, basically.
Yeah.
And so with that is just this, man, I've got to make this work. I've got to be successful. I've got to prove to him and anybody else that, like, you. And keep in mind, back then, sports talk was not a career. It was like a small part of a news talk radio station. It wasn't the whole format. I'm that old that it's kind of like the book Outliers describes, where just your timing is everything in your career. And like Steve Jobs being at Michigan at just the right time. I think it was Steve Jobs, but he was at Michigan right when he was old enough to be a student, but young enough that he didn't have a social life. And here's this computer that shows up and just, hey, play with it and figure it out. And he did, and he became Steve Jobs. And so that for me, that was sports radio. But when I entered high school, it didn't exist. Mm-hmm. By the time I left college, they're looking for guys like me to sort of fill all of these spots. They needed sports nerds. And so being a sports nerd at a extremely high level, if I come along in 2021, all those jobs are sort of taken. But if I come along in 1994, they're like, you're just usher you in, basically that sort of thing. And so
the timing was perfect. Yeah.
The timing was perfect for that, but I wasn't ready to like be a public Christian guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so not that I was knocking off convenience stores or, robbing banks or anything like that, but I was super low profile. And then I had kind of an epiphany that, not to get too serious here, but my family, and I love them very much. I just have broken away just a little bit and kind of been my own guy for a while. But my younger brother is almost me. Like he's very similar in looks, in voice, and premature baldness, and just all these things.
I've heard him on. Did he come on the air?
And he's a pastor and a U.S. Army chaplain. So he's taking the skill set and his religious background, and he's using it to further, the kingdom or whatever, right? And I'm laughing at fart jokes,
right?
And so somewhere around my 30th birthday was this big epiphany that, you're here for a reason. These doors have opened for a reason. Be you.
Yeah.
And people will be fine with that.
Yep.
And they're not going to run you out of town because, what you do on Sundays or whatever. So because I never wanted to work at some Christian radio station. That sounds super boring to me.
Yeah.
And by the way, for those people, that's awesome.
Yes. But I will say too, though, I feel like I hate that for those I'm a Christian. I hate that for those of us that are Christians that feel like we kind of you kind of hide behind it. You hide
Right.
behind that faith. And if someone thanks God, you're like, oh, they're thanking God. I don't know about, like, I do thank God, like,
Right.
every day,
Right.
multiple times, like, for various reasons. I mean, I do pray. I
Sure.
do, all those things.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to be at a point where I'm like, oh yeah, I said prayers and
Right.
God. And, I mean, for me, it's like, that's part of who I am. If that's not your jam, that's fine.
Totally.
I'll talk to you about it all day long about my faith. And let me tell you something. I don't know shit about the Bible.
Right.
I just know about
Right,
my
right.
faith. I know about
What a sentence.
We've had,
that's the throw pillow slogan.
I don't know shit about the Bible.
Yeah, that's great.
But like, we had my pastor on, and we talked a long time about that and about, like, and it was funny because I was like, oh, when I texted him if he would come on, and he was like, oh yeah, I listen all the time, and I'm like, oh,
yeah.
he
Been
listens
there.
to us.
He's gonna get kicked
And
out
I'm
of the
like,
church.
and he's like, so why are you so worried? I'm like, I don't know, because it's kind of like what. I try not to cuss around my kids. Like,
Right.
I put you kind of in the same box as my kids.
Totally.
And he's so relatable. And I feel like that's what my papa was a Baptist preacher. My dad went completely the opposite direction.
Yeah.
We went to church on our own.
Right.
And so, like I said, I can't give you a whole lot of, like, I don't know, like, background and
No, but well, I mean,
But you don't have
stuff.
to,
But
right?
it's like I have this faith, and it's been created by the people that have been in my life.
Right.
And I don't ever want to hide behind that. I don't ever want to pretend like I don't have it. I don't ever want to pretend that. Nor do I ever want to impose it upon anyone. I want
Right.
to tell people about it if they would are so inclined and would like to
Sure.
hear about it. It's not something I hide. It's not something I try to impose upon people. But also too, I feel like there shouldn't be this, like, I'm gonna sit back here and go to church.
You know what that
and,
is? That's because legalism is confused for faith. And this is what's in my head because I was raised in it. Is that we are very quick, as at least in the 70s and 80s, this was huge. Is that if we can make a series of rules part of faith, then our kids will never misbehave. And so I was raised in the, girls don't wear shorts. I wore a tie for most of my, upbringing all the way through college. I wore a tie all the time, thousands of times. And that's maybe why I love flip-flops so much now. But it was absolutely like, I would have got kicked out of my school if I was caught going in or out of a movie theater. Doesn't matter what the movie was. Does not matter what the movie was. And that was crazy to me. And I didn't really think that had anything to do with faith. And now, not to tiptoe over this topic, but now we confuse politics for faith.
Uh-huh.
And the idea that, well, I mean, there's clearly this issue that God feels very strongly of. And I say, yeah, of course there is. But what about these 10? And I even had this conversation with my dad, because we probably know what political issue we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. But I said, hey, I get that this one issue is, the one issue that controls how people vote. But are you willing to give up 10 of these for one of those? I mean, at what point, how about 20? At what point is your breaking point where this one issue is not going to determine how you see the world? And I got to that point, and I'm not in any way ashamed to say I got to the point where we tipped way too far for this one issue, and you lost me. So if being, a child of God means I vote this particular way every time, well, then I'm out. I by the way, I don't really think that the God I believe in is terribly interested in the borders we've drawn on a map. I've said that a million times.
Yeah.
I think we're all God's children, which is why I feel like I do about adoption and immigration and all these other things that, so I realize it's always real popular to switch things to politics, but I do think, whether it's how long your hair is as a dude and does it touch your ears and did you go to church 3 times this week or just once, and just all these things that we confuse for faith has basically turned off the galaxy to faith.
Right.
And I would like to bring it back a little bit to, hey, some of us are normal and we're we're totally cool with understanding the main thrust of the whole thing is love. Is that you know, in my case, Jesus loves, you know, you, but he also loves the person completely the opposite of you, and it's okay to live your life like that. But I had to get past the thought that if I say things like that, my entire career is gonna,
because you learned that it won't. And I bet I don't know if you've been surprised by how many people are thankful that you say those things or say that they agree with you.
I mean, it really teaches me that God's a real thing.
Yeah.
Because that epiphany happened, I always say, in 2005. So I guess technically I was about 33. And I remember just thinking, there's got to be more to this. And there's got to be more to life. Like I always hoped I would get to this level. I mean, honestly, I kind of hoped I was going to play in the NBA. And then I hoped I was going to play-by-play for an NHL team. But once I got to a dream I could achieve.
Yeah. There you go.
I reached it, and it kind of felt like, So
this is,
what was the point to all this? I don't really get. I mean, it's a cool SUV. It's fun to go to Starbucks, but what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And so 2005, I ended up sort of looking for something, and whatever that means. For me, I would say by coincidence, but of course, I've just told you I believe in God, so I suppose he made this happen. But there was a missions thing that Sunday at church, and it sounds so hokey to say it that way, but I swear to you, the timing was I hit this like Friday, and then Sunday, a group of guys I sort of knew were like, dude, you should come to Guatemala with us. I'm like, man, I don't know, man. It's football season. I'm busy. No. We can leave Wednesday night. We'll have you back for Cowboys kickoff. We swear. We're going to go to Guatemala. It's a 2-hour flight. No problem.
Yeah.
And we will change your life in 4 days. I'm like, okay. I guess I don't have a good excuse.
Yeah.
So I took 2 days off work, Thursday and Friday. I was back by, the Cowboys, kickoff, because isn't that important?
It is.
Most important.
And that changed my life, because I spent that weekend basically hanging out with orphans, and that led to another trip to Guatemala, and another one, and then take your wife, and then that leads to, man, should we be adopting one of these kiddos? And that led to adoption, and then you're telling these stories on the air, and people are actually telling me that they adopted because they heard me tell, and so you're like, oh my gosh.
Like, I put you in touch with a guy I worked with.
Yeah,
that had a similar
It's just
story,
bizarre. And so, if you want to go back to, so what's the point of all this? I assume this microphone reaches people.
Yep.
And maybe, maybe my faith said, say something into the mic. It's not going to get you fired. You might actually affect people's lives for good. And, that led to like Drop Your Pants and all these other things that we've done. And it's not me, but it's having a little courage to be yourself, which leads to all these things. So,
and isn't that a beautiful place when you get to that,
gosh.
when you get to that age and that stage in your life where like,
you're just like,
this is me.
This is me.
Yeah.
And
warts and all, everything.
Yeah. And some people act differently around you because they're trying to respect you. Some are, because you annoy them, but still others are like, that's my guy, that represents me.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can listen to the ticket because my guy's on there. And if he can work up there, well, then and just, so anyway, it's weird. We all want to think we sort of control our path. And if we work a little harder, we can get that door to open for us. And in some ways, you're kind of in control. And in other ways, you feel these doors open up because you're doing what you're supposed to do, or you're not. I don't know. It's weird.
So I want to ask you about, I wanted to segue into the adoption.
Yeah.
And so you had 2 children prior.
Right.
Ages at the time.
Well, at the time. It's a 2-year process, but we have a sweet daughter born in 2002 and a sweet son born in 2004. And so we got son, daughter, we're good. We got 2 kids, we're set. I probably didn't take Sally to Guatemala till 2008. And then our third kiddo, Justin, joined us in 2011.
Okay. When did you meet Justin? Did you meet him long before you actually got custody of him?
Well, so you start this process and you're like, we should adopt. And I think did I say 2008? So by 2009, we're doing paperwork. We're like, we're going to adopt, and we're going to adopt from a Spanish-speaking country because my wife is Mexican. And even though my Spanish is better. And she knows. And if you get her in just the right mood, she'll admit it. But so we start saying, Spanish speaking child, because her dad literally swam the Rio Grande. So when people are like, why do you feel like you do about immigration? Well, there's a really good reason.
Yeah, no kidding.
I married into a guy who spent 40 years as a police sergeant in Wisconsin after swimming the river.
Wow.
Which is incredible. It's a great American story to me, but it didn't start with, him filling out paperwork. He just went to go chase his dream as a teenager. So I think that's cool. And I realize we have to figure out how to handle all that stuff. And that wasn't what you asked me. So anyway, we wanted to go to Guatemala to adopt, because I had done like 10 mission trips there. And we're filling out the paperwork. And at that precise time, Guatemala closes its international adoptions, not because it wanted to. There is something I think called the Hague, something or other, that closed it for them. It's like a worldwide adoption thing.
Okay.
And Guatemala was guilty of baby farms.
Oh, no.
So they have all these countries in Central America and probably all over the world that aren't super rich like ours have a orphan problem. Okay. And so at one point, the number was like 140 million orphans. That feels like an impossible number. But let's just say it's 40 million orphans. Doesn't that still sound like a lot? Yeah. And so worldwide, millions and millions and millions of orphans. And so each country has their kiddos that need to be adopted. They would love it if it's domestic. But now that international, maybe some of these people from rich countries can help us out. And that's where we came in. We were like, it's fun going down there on trips. We bring them shoes. We buy them pizza. We play soccer. But then in 3 days, it's over.
Yep.
And they're still orphans. Yep. So Guatemala had orphans, tons of them.
Okay.
But the Guatemala import or export, number one, coffee. Number two, kids.
Really?
It's a huge moneymaker. So what was happening was these orphans were not getting adopted. They were making babies because so many American couples want newborns when they adopt. I get it. But that meant the orphans were never actually getting adopted. They were paying teenage girls to have brand new babies, and we can adopt these way easier, right? And so Guatemala was caught doing that, and people were like, well, why didn't Guatemala stop it? And I always say, well, they can't run elections very well. They're not going to be able to stop the people that see babies as a incredible moneymaker.
Yeah, a commodity.
Jeez.
So you can charge an American family 30 or 40 grand for a fresh baby, and you can pay a teenage girl there like $200 to have that baby, and the rest is like pure profit. And everybody's like, "Stop making babies! We're trying to help the orphans here." So
the whole point.
That's the whole point. Well, they couldn't get that handled as well as I understand it. And if you are an expert on Guatemalan adoptions, and if I got any of this wrong, I greatly apologize. But it's as I understand it. So Guatemala closes. And the adoption agency, Buckner, right here in town, says, well, what about China? What about Russia? What about Kenya? We have a number of other countries. And we're like, man, we know Jesus loves all the children of the world. We feel compelled that there is a Spanish-speaking kiddo that
and you had been there and you had seen it with your own eyes. And
Yes. And so Guatemala's closed, and they said, nothing for like 6 months. And then, hey, Honduras is about to open up. Honduras is the next door neighbor of Guatemala, and they had never really done international adoptions, at least to the United States, I think. And they said, would you be interested in Honduras? We had never been there, but Guatemala, Honduras, tomato, they're touching each other in Central America. Yes, we would. And so long story longer, we were the first U.S. family, I think, to adopt a Honduran kiddo.
Wow.
And so when did we meet him? I was on a Stars road trip, and we were doing bad radio from a studio in Vancouver in February of 2011, which ended up being quite a year for me because Packers won in Dallas. Mavs won. Rangers were in the World Series.
So
not quite as happy. And I wrote that Mavs book, and we adopted a kiddo, not in that order. The kiddo comes first. Anyway, so in February, I get an email from my wife that, because we told the adoption agency that we are open to whoever God puts on our plate. Because you wouldn't believe the questionnaires and the...
Oh, I can only imagine.
And you also go to the Children's Hospital in Dallas. Which one? The one where Kennedy was taken.
Parkland.
We go to Parkland, and we met up with this great doctor, and she walked us through this questionnaire, which is basically what sort of conditions are you open to for an international adopted kid? Because this is a very serious thing, and you need to know that many of these kiddos, in fact, almost all of them, will have a special need of some sort. And what are you open to? And we're trying to be like, well, I mean, I think we can handle this, and I think we can handle this. And they tell you, here's the thing, like 75% of pregnant women drink in Central America. It's not really a big hang up like it is here. So you have a number of things that come with that. Then you've got, cleft palate. You got all these, I mean, everything in the world for like special needs or conditions that kiddos are born with. And then, orphans, some families down there are so poor that it almost, it's almost like if anything's wrong with this baby, we're giving it up because we can afford like one baby and we want it to be perfect sort of thing, Yeah. So it's rough.
We're not equipped to handle this.
Yeah. So Sally and I, we did say no to a few things. Like I said, there were like 250 questions. It was crazy. We said, well, maybe we're not equipped to do that one or that one, but everything else, whatever happens. Then they're like, okay, well, what ages, what gender? And the thing about this is that's an important question, the age one. Because like we said, most people adopt because they can't have their own children. In no way, shape, or form am I saying that makes them a different category because every kid needs a great home. It doesn't matter. But I will tell you, whatever you move the slider to on the age.
Going at the high end?
They're going to go high end.
Yeah.
So we said 0 to 4. Why did we say 0 to 4? Because our youngest kiddo was 5 at the time. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want an older kid, perhaps, your mind plays tricks on you, but you don't want the older kid bullying your kid. And so you're like, okay, well, we need our adopted kiddo to be the youngest.
Right.
We just do.
Yeah.
Because we love our scene. We want to add to our scene. It's definitely going to change, but we don't want any of our current kiddos to feel like they're threatened in any way. So we go all the way to 4, and Bing, the first one they gave us is a 4-year-old, and it's Justin. And we had been praying, like, whatever that picture is, thumbs up from us. We're, because, I mean, it's a weird thing, right? They what about this one?
Like,
I don't know.
Yeah. How do you
you're sending me a
judge
picture. And how am I supposed to thumbs down a baby that you're sending us? And so saw the picture in Vancouver doing bad radio during a break.
Oh my goodness.
During
a break
in February. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this picture of this cute little kid. And I'm like, of course, yes. And Sally's, yeah, of course, yes. And we sent it right back to him. They set up a visit with him in April. And so that was its own crazy experience, including him punching me in the face. And I probably deserved it. I always tell myself there's a good chance I'm the first white person he had ever met.
Right.
I mean, imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine like me being the first white person you ever meet for a cute little Honduran kid. And so of course it had its ups and downs, that little four day get together. But again, we're at breakfast the final day after we dropped him off, and we're, my wife and I are both like, kind of eating breakfast quietly. And I'm like telling her, like, listen, we can get out of this right now if you want. Like, if we're not feeling this is right, nobody's going to judge us. We can come up with something. And, we can do what we want to do. Let's not do this because we feel like we're pot committed. Let's do this because this is our mission. This is our calling. And, we had a tearful breakfast, trying to sort out, this is big. Yeah. And then at the end, we're like, we're doing it. Wow. And so now we're doing it. And now you got May, June, July, and part of August where you're basically on call. And I don't know, I guess papers and customs or whatever it is, maybe not even customs, but they have to make sure you're not involved in child trafficking. Okay. And there's so much child trafficking in this world that basically the U.S. and Honduras have to do their own investigations and, figure out whose kid is this. Right. He's an orphan. But, just all these things and make sure it's above board. And then finally in August, they're like, come on. And this is where I have to be thankful to the ticket forever and ever, regardless of, what that means is, I just told them, I'm like, this is super important to me. I hope it doesn't hit during Cowboy season, but I need to be gone for 4 to 6 weeks to go live in Honduras to make this adoption happen. And I'm like, I'm sure it's April. I'm sure it won't happen during Cowboy season. And of course, August 30th was day one, and I didn't come back till like week 6 of the season. So I'm one of their football guys, and I missed 6 weeks of the football season, and the ticket was so cool about it. And they're just like, hey, come back when you're ready. And we got back and had Justin with us, and it was 40 days. So if you like your biblical analogies, it was 40 days in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, and now he's 15, and he has trouble getting out of bed just like our other teenagers.
Yeah, just like him.
Yeah.
I have an interesting question. There's obviously so many questions we could ask about Justin and your family and how it's all gone, but I'm wondering, did all of that make your marriage stronger and your relationship stronger? That's a lot to go through. Just doing something like that together is huge.
No, I think so, but it also tested in ways, it's a weird deal because there's no doubt if you do something like that you feel like, and trust me, this has been my only girlfriend of my whole life. Yeah. So I wasn't actually thinking this, but I thought, gosh, once you do an adoption, if you were to get a divorce after that, it would look so lousy. Like you adopted a kid and then you broke up. Like now he's in a you
have to sell yourself even to the agency. Like
you're signing.
We've got it together.
Yes, you're signing up for a lifetime contract with your spouse, which wasn't difficult to me because again, going back to my weird upbringing,
but it is an extra
kissed
layer
one
of
girl
commitment.
in my life, everybody. So
one girl.
Good
for you.
Yeah, I mean, I assume
that's awesome.
Me too.
I'm assuming she's good at kissing, but.
You didn't get my joke by me too.
No, I actually enjoyed it very much.
She said, I've only kissed one girl in my life, and I said, me too.
Oh.
It was solid. It's solid comedy.
I really haven't kissed another girl.
But have you kissed one?
No, I haven't. Not like that.
That's where the error is in the joke, I feel like. Okay, sorry.
Well, what are you trying to say?
Yeah.
Nothing. But I thought you were saying you had, unless we count moms. Daughters?
Felt like you were high grounding her on the number of girls you've kissed, to be honest.
I'm with you.
I wasn't. That'd be funny, though, if I was.
It would be funny.
Oh, just one?
Yeah, talk to me.
That would have been, you didn't go to college.
This is what I was hoping for,
Talk to me when you have this many.
This is kind of what I was hoping for when I lobbed that out there.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Now we're in. Now we're cooking.
Might have taken the scenic route a little bit.
I showed up.
No, you know what's interesting about that experience, though, is we all process it at our own speeds.
Yeah.
And what I mean about that is the concept of carrying a child versus adopting a 4-year-old is a wildly different experience, just from the sense of like a mom's love for a kid does not, it's like saying, how do you get up to speed on the freeway? You don't just hit start on your car and you're going 80. You have to ramp up.
Yeah.
And so the question that I think you ask yourself internally, and I'm not just speaking of my wife, I'm speaking of me, is when do you love that child at the same level of your biological children? Because I absolutely feel like I do, but did I always? And I am the type of person that I do probably flip a light switch the second I commit to something. Mm-hmm. But it's not normal. Normal is
easing in a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And growing into it. And if he does punch you in the face, you're like, who is this kid? And where, whereas your kid, your actual child could lash out at you and you might even laugh, at least the second they leave the room. But if it's a stranger kid, you would be like,
it's just a different.
Whose kid is this?
Yeah.
And so, I do think there are natural things where you're trying to convince yourself that he is forever in our family, sort of thing. And what a weird conversation to have. But I thought you ladies wanted to get real here.
We're getting real, Bob.
So,
we always do.
And so it's that first little while, every day he's more part of the family, but then you sign up and you actually say to them, it's important to us that he's Spanish speaking. Well, then the problem with that is your family isn't. Uh-huh. And so now you're trying to learn these barriers as he's trying to learn freaking English, and you're trying to do better than like first grader Spanish.
Right.
And
it's all hard enough without the language barrier, but at the same time,
well, we wanted a high degree of difficulty.
Well, you put value in in who he was, in the language he spoke, and so you just deal with it. I guess, right?
And so I remember our kids, who you want to talk about Sally and I being everything's a blur. Well, how about being like a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old who first of all, you're going to Honduras for the first time because they weren't on that trip in April, but we're telling them about the trip. We're showing them pictures. And so the 5-year-old grew up in Capel.
Right. And kids are going to Disney or whatever.
Yeah,
and you're like, here we go.
We're going to live in Honduras for 6 weeks. Well, what does that mean? Well, pack some coloring books. And, it's
gosh, just traveling with kids is hard enough in general.
It was so weird. And I remember Brettito, our biological son, Brett, as some might call him here in the States.
Here in the States.
But I remember him when he was far more innocent and far more huggable. I'm kidding. But he because he's the boy and he's 5 and this kid's 4, they're in the same stuff. They're sharing toys, even though that means Brett just let him play with whatever you're playing with. And I remember him basically wondering when we get to take him back.
Yeah.
And that's
not grasping the whole.
That's that moment of clarity that this isn't a play date. This is how it's going to be. And so at first Dad thought, well, bunk beds, buddies, best friends. Oh. And then my wife is like, I kind of think they need their own space. I think we're throwing a lot at Brett right now. And Justin is all up in everyone's business because, he's lived in an orphanage where there are 40 kids in a room. So personal space isn't really something, so there's a lot of those little details that, a decade later are kind of fun to reveal to people that care. But at the time we're freaking out a little bit underneath the surface just because, you want, if you're second guessing everything with your own biological kids, imagine your second guesses with introducing, the new fish to the aquarium and just hoping they all play nice together.
And probably another layer of it too is, and you've said as much, but it's like when you're dealing with stuff with your own kids and siblings, that's just the way it is. They're your kids. But when you have that added layer of this is a decision that we made, right? Like we brought this into our life and into our kids' lives. So I imagine it's just a whole nother layer.
Well, I mean, I've heard that people like buy a dog and then 2 weeks later are like, we got to give it back.
Yeah.
And there's doing that in this game. I mean,
it's
how lousy would that look? Like,
no take backs. This didn't work out as well as we thought.
No, I mean, we're in. And so, I suppose that could really test everything, and it probably did. and maybe I'll never truly know the effects other than, you just stack one day on top of the next and just hope that everybody feels loved and everybody feels comfortable and everybody is in a better place. And, at some point very soon, I've promised Justin to take him back to Honduras to kind of show him all the spots. And I think that's a really important thing, because when we were kids, adoption was like a secret.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And there was a point that the adopted kid, like at age 16, might find out he's adopted.
Right.
And I think at the time we thought we were doing the right thing as a society, but that is a absolute no-no these days.
Yeah.
And there's books and research and obviously a whole generation of adopted kids that would say, don't do that to the next group. But yeah, our process was like, from the get-go, it's not your whole identity, but it's part of your story.
Right.
And it's your story. So if you're uncomfortable with, dad going on podcasts, whatever those might be someday, and talking about it, at any point, I'll reel it in. But I do think it helps people kind of understand what the experience is like to talk about it. But more than anything, we didn't want any of this to be a secret to him. Yeah. Now he's 4, so you'll remember things, and we're not going to be able to convince you were born in Coppell. Yeah, and there are still things he remembers, but I don't know how much of that is like a construct of his brain versus real memories, and it's an interesting process. But through it all, I think it's important to like hold on to the Honduran part of his life.
Of course.
And really, I try to convince him this. And again, I apologize if I'm wandering off the road from time to time, but I try to convince him all the time that Spanish is your friend.
Ugh.
And
so true.
Well, if you've lived 2 lives, one in an orphanage and one in DFW suburbia,
yeah,
you're going to opt for this one.
Yeah.
You just are. Swimming pools are cool. Square footage is cool. Whatever. I mean, I'm just saying, I love Honduras. I really do, but I do prefer Coppell. And, with that for him, compartmentally in his brain, Spanish, English.
Yeah.
And I try to say to him, buddy, you have this enormous gift of you have a skin color that is so comforting to millions of people from that part of the world. And if you kind of refuse Spanish in your life, you're going to miss out on touching so many lives. I'm not pushing you into it, but I'm just saying, don't push Spanish away and just embrace English if your entire appearance says I'm from Honduras. That's going to mean so much to people. You can bless so many people that I can't, because I don't make them feel comfortable because I'm this giant, weird looking white guy. If we're going to go to the same places and you will be embraced and they'll be looking at me with a side eye.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to express that to him. It's a work in progress, but it's a super complex thing. But part of that is we got to go back. We got to go back to Honduras. We got to show you this lady was, a nurse or a teacher at the orphanage. This lady, helped our whole family through the adoption process. This dude, or this is the hospital and whatever. And so we're pretty close to that. I still want to wait as long as possible till he really kind of initiates it a little more. But I'm looking forward to getting back there.
So what is the relationship now like with his siblings?
Great, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's...
I mean, listen, all siblings.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Right.
Is you're like, okay, so how do normal brothers feel about each other?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's excellent. He's his own dude, as they all are. My girl is off trying to conquer the world at college already. And my oldest son is trying to figure out, what he wants to do on a day by day or for the rest of his life basis. And that's really complicated to him because he's like, Dad, I really don't care about sports. And I'm like, I know, I didn't want to make you care about it. I'm happy, whatever.
That's good. There's way better jobs if you don't care about sports.
Absolutely.
Don't get sucked into this.
And then Justin, is, I suppose, part of his background, but he just he wants to play soccer all the time, and he's pretty good at it. So, we get him involved in all those things, but in general, it's fun to come home and those two are watching movies or playing video games together, and or running to McDonald's now that the older one has a driver's license.
Oh, fun.
And so they. I don't think Brett wants to take Justin back anymore. I think the 11 years have changed his view on that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so that's good.
And how's having a daughter in college?
Weird.
Yeah.
Super weird.
Was it super emotional taking her and then coming back home and looking in her room?
No, it kicked my butt.
Yeah.
It kicked my butt quite a bit. I didn't know it would. Well, I probably guessed it would.
Gosh, I can't imagine.
Yeah,
I can't imagine Kelly. Like, I'm just looking at Anna now, and as sentimental as he gets with her.
Right, and there is that daughter-daddy thing going.
It's a big deal.
And we redshirted her in kindergarten.
Yep.
Because
same. Redshirted both my kids.
Keep them longer.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and I thought to myself, because there's stigma with that you guys are trying to game the system so she can get a scholarship.
Yeah, breed some athletes, bro.
She never played a game in her life. Trust me. She wasn't trying to game the system. But I remember the kindergarten teacher was like, look, she's the youngest kid in here. She's great. She's killing it with the academics. But as far as like social skills, you can tell she's the youngest one in here. If you have her go around again, she'll be the oldest one in here. And I think you'll be happy about that. And I was kind of old school dad at the time thinking that sounds dumb. She just needs to toughen up. But I remember my wife and I talking about her like, well, let's work ahead here. When she's 18, she can either be the youngest college freshman,
which is what I was, and it sucked.
Or she can have that entire year living with mom and dad and then be that much further down the road in life when she's on a college campus. So, she brings it up periodically that we held her from conquering the world for a year, but it gave me a year to kind of see how independent she was. And frankly, during that year, you kind of almost feel like a landlord renter experience where she's in the house, but you're just like, you just get called if something breaks,
right? Yep. Right.
And so she was ready, but unpacking and leaving her in College Station was really tough on me. And so, now, so we look for excuses. We go to a bunch of football games and they're fun, but we're really doing it so we can see our daughter every 2 weeks,
right?
That sort of thing. So.
Okay. I got one more thing to ask, but we got to get in a couple sponsors. You want to start? You want me to?
Sure.
And I know
we can talk quickly about,
you have actual,
he has a real job. We can talk quickly about Globe Life and the job market. We're talking about growing up, trying to figure out what you're going to do when you grow up. And if you thought you figured it out, maybe you didn't. Well, check out Globe Life. The job market right now is a different landscape than it used to be, whether you're attempting to balance your work and home life or find a career that aligns with your goals and needs. It's a lot to juggle. We're already juggling a lot in life. So it doesn't have to be your career. If you're looking for a career path that offers you a flexible schedule, the ability to make a difference, and the independence to build your own business, take a look at Globe Life. Anyone who has watched the Rangers knows the name Globe Life, but people may not know how much opportunity is really there. I know that I didn't until we started doing these spots. You also may not know how many successful women thrive in their careers with Globe Life. If you've never considered the insurance industry, you should know a growing number of women are finding true success in it. Globe Life has been around for a long time, generations. They pride themselves on their commitment to make tomorrow better. They have various business models, virtual or in person. You can find success wherever you are. You will get paid what you're worth. You can keep a flexible schedule. You can find meaning in your career, all while being engaged in what matters most at home, which is a lot. That's all we've been talking about for an hour, is what matters most at home. Reach out to Globe Life today at globelifeagents.com. It could change your trajectory in a way you never thought possible. That's globelifeagents.com. to discover what a career at Globe Life can do for you.
And I feel like our next sponsor and Globe Life are very much in line with what they're trying to do and why we are so appreciative of them being sponsors. And of course, I'm talking about Next Step Recruiting, which places direct hire, contract, and contract to hire candidates in various industries, including IT, finance and accounting, human resources, and administrative. They've got 3 offices in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin, supporting over 250 small to Fortune 100 companies across the United States. One of my favorite people at Next Step Recruiting is the head boss in charge, Nikki Koyman. She's a year-over-year multi-million-dollar producer that is a mom to 3, wife and co-owner and VP of Next Step Recruiting, all while continuing to be ranked as not one, it is the one. Either one of, if not the best
there you go.
developmental
Nailed it.
professionals in the IT staffing industry. So Next Step Recruiting is a great resource for so many companies. And I know especially right now, it's hard to find people to go to work. So look to Next Step Recruiting to help you find people to place in the positions that you need. Next Step Recruiting's dynamic professional services division is comprised of CPA, accounting, and professional HR staff that continuously successfully and continuously vets all levels of
Sweden.
professionals from HR to accountants to CFO. Anyway, Next Step Recruiting, if you are a company that is looking to staff positions, reach out to them. My girl, Nikki Koyman, is the boss. And Julie, tell us the website because you're always so good at that.
www.nsrusa.com.
nsrusa.com. Okay, last thing for me before we go.
Sure.
I completely forgot it.
You did?
I did. I had it in my mind when I said...
Was it about parenting? Was it about sports?
Not.
Did you want to talk about the Cowboys?
Oh, okay. I know what it was. It was about the ticket.
Okay.
How's it been? The transition. And it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you finally, are you settled?
I do. I think so.
Big...
Yeah, it was weird.
That's a...
Talk about living in your own head.
That's a hard... And you know what? It's... As your friend, I could tell, like that you're like, you had to feel your way out of it, and change is hard as shit, right?
Yeah. And and
when you're in the middle of it,
you love your show.
Yeah.
You love Ryan's. So you love all this stuff. You love the hard line as it was. And then you're hearing from people who hate change. And I get it. The whole point of the ticket is we get our hooks into you. And you don't want it to change.
People aren't going to stay forever.
No, but they don't care, right?
There's going to be change.
Yeah,
yes.
and then of course everybody's a PD, and so once Ryan's is gone, and once we come to grips with that, well then we should absolutely all get to vote on what the new shows will be. And everybody had an opinion, and honestly, nobody thought, well, Bob on the hard line makes sense, I guess, except the people that made the decision. And it was weird because I love Dan, and there's no way for people to consume that without thinking, man, I didn't realize they hated each other. Well, we don't. We don't. We talk all the time. We're great friends, and frankly, we didn't. Either of us knew. Neither of us had any idea what would become of each of our shows. Right?
Yeah.
Like the Hardline could fail with Bob. The Hang Zone could fail with Dan and Jake. Maybe it just doesn't work. This stuff isn't easy. Will the audience enjoy it? And I think a year and a half later, there are still people with reservations, but I've also learned who cares. Yes. And the general view is we're doing the best shows we know how, but luckily we're pretty good at doing the best shows we know how. And we all like each other. That's the thing as well, is if you are in this career, it really helps if you think that everybody's working super hard and everybody genuinely enjoys working with each other. Is it everyone's first choice? Like I said, for me, I was obviously flattered because that it's a very important spot for the station. They need Afternoon Drive to be successful, to remain a successful radio station. And if they asked me to be their best version of that guy, then I thought I owed it to them, going back to letting me leave for 6 weeks, to hiring me out of Lynchburg in 1998. They've really never asked me to do anything but a good show. Now they're asking me to leave my 21-year show and sort of try something new with Corby. and give that our best shot to sort of anchor the afternoon part of our radio station. And I thought, man, it'd be pretty selfish for me to say, no, me and Dan, ride or die, you know, either
going to ride off into the sunset.
Either demote Corby to a spot that he didn't deserve that, or just leave us at noon to 3 and whatever you guys put in the afternoon. Why do we care? We, this isn't our problem. Well, it is our problem. The ticket took us in. They're our friends. They put us on their team. We've benefited. We have big houses because of the ticket. So if they ask one favor out of me, I should at least give it my best shot. And so we did. It was awkward. Obviously, I heard all the voices saying, what a weird choice. You should have done this. You could have done that. What's he doing on this comedy show? He's a sports nerd and whatever, But I think, 20 months later, I think it's a really good show. And I love that Dan and Jake are a really good show. And so is it what it once was? I don't know. But I do know that I'm happy going to work, and it sounds like Dan's happy too. And Corby is the coolest dude in the world. I hope the perception.
He's such a chameleon. He's
so nice.
Yeah, he can fit in anywhere, and he can make everyone around him feel comfortable.
He's the nicest human. I didn't know that. I thought, well, okay, we're buddies, but we've never worked hours and hours and hours, weeks after weeks. But now I know. Dude is a legitimate great guy.
Yeah.
And
so are you,
it's
Bob.
fun. It's fun to listen to.
And we're so happy that you came in. Thanks for telling your story. I love to hear it. I think it's fascinating to hear.
I talk a lot.
We
make
also,
a career of it.
We also talk a lot. So thank you so much for being with us.
Though. We talk about all kinds of things on this show, but that we love having the platform to dive deep into something that we feel like is very interesting and meaningful, and that people will want to hear. And that's exactly what you did for us.
I'm honored.
So thank you.
Did it bother you that Julie's headphones were twisted up the whole time?
Oh, geez. Here she goes again.
I thought it was nice. I
thought it was nice.
I thought she was making a nice design for me.
Okay, all right. Well, before we sign off, we had to do our last thing. We do the peace signs. We look in your camera.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then you just say,
Get your peace signs out.
Get your peace signs out.
Yeah.
And say, Mom game.
Yeah. Let's have Bob back, though, at some point.
We will.
Before we. Okay.
Deuces.
Let's do it.
Because we didn't even talk about, not that we have to talk about sports, but we'll talk about sports. We can talk more about
sports.
So much.
We didn't even talk about sports.
I know.
Right?
Next time.
Next time.
When the Cowboys are in the Super Bowl.
Ooh.
Okay.
I like it. Confident
Book it. Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Mom game
Mom
out.
game.
Mom game out.
Out.